Hello and welcome to another WeAreDevelopers Live. It's Wednesday again. We looked at the bar going there, and before it actually ended, it turns to the other screen. So I'm confused about this every single time. But what can you do? This is interfaces and this is UX. So let's play with that and debug it. I'm here with Dan Cranny. He's our developer relations person in the UK, and I'm the VP of Developer Relations at WeAreDevelopers. And yeah, it's summery. It's nice. I have my window open, so hopefully the neighbors won't be too loud. But yeah, how do you do? How do you do, Greg? Dan, what's on your end?
Yeah, very well. Very well. Good to be back here again. I mean, you say it's summery. You know, I know we've said, I think yesterday you even said to me, Dan, stop telling me every day it's sunny, and it's not today. So, you know, it's kind of, yeah, very on brand for the UK to just be very, very rainy and a bit grey. But anyway, it's good to be back here. I'm looking forward to today.
Well, summer's over, so that's basically that in the UK right now.
Mhm.
And today we got somebody here who I'm very excited that actually managed to give us some time, because he's super busy doing his own live stuff on other platforms and all kind of information, talking at conferences. So today our guest is Tejas Kumar. How are you doing, Tejas?
Hey, it's good to be here. Thanks for having me. I'm doing well. The sun is shining, and I'm wondering what I'm doing indoors, but it's good to be here.
Because outside it's glaring on your screen and you can't read things, and when you're coding, that's the biggest problem, I guess.
Probably, yeah. That's probably what it is.
Yeah. So you've been busy. You're a top-selling book author of React books. Is that right? Is that still top-selling, or has somebody taken the crown from you?
That's a good question. I don't know, because I don't check every day if I'm top selling, but it was at one point, and just one React book. It's called Fluent React. I have it here, but the cool thing is, it's I'm getting off camera because I'm reaching, but this book I just found out was recently translated into Korean.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's wild. And like my words in Korean. So I think it must be selling well in Asia or something. But yeah, I keep getting copies of this book in different languages, and I go like, whoa, I did that. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting journey.
It's a bit like when you publish things on the web, and out of a sudden somebody proposes to translate it into Chinese and put it on a news portal there, and you're like, okay, I can trust the translation, I guess, but it's interesting when you get that kind of reach, and these things are coming around right now. Now you shifted away from the React world a bit towards the thing that I think somebody talked about the other day. Oh yeah, AI. Yeah. So what's your big thing there? What drives you most in the AI world right now? What do you think is the most exciting bit at the moment?
At the moment, the most exciting thing is Model Context Protocol, or MCP, which is a standardized way for any vendor with an API to share interactivity with that API with an AI application that uses some type of LLM. And so think, for example, Slack, right, could expose a Model Context Protocol server, and then you, with either Cursor or ChatGPT, whatever it may be, you just say, hey, give me a summary of what happened in my Slack. Give me a summary of my unreads from yesterday. And your AI application will do that for you. Okay, what's an urgent Slack message? And your assistants get more capabilities because of MCP, because of Model Context Protocol. So Slack actually does have a MCP server, and any client application can connect to it. But there's, I work for a database company. I work for a many software product company, and we also have a database now that you could just operate with an AI assistant. So you can like talk to ChatGPT or Cursor or Claude and just say, hey, who's the top performing employee in my employees table in my database? And it will just like get you a list of names. Or if it doesn't know what top performing means, it will ask you or it will guess. And it'll say, what do you mean by top performing? Do you mean salespeople who have closed the most contracts? Do you mean engineers who have committed the most features? Like, what do you mean? And if it doesn't know, it will ask you. If it just knows you from context, it will guess. And you can always interrupt it as the human in the loop and say, no, I meant top performing like this. And you just talk, and it operates your database. It does all the queries, the filters, whatever, and gives you back data. So MCP enables incredible things. I mean, you could think of a travel website saying, you just like send ChatGPT or a similar client a message saying, hey, I need to be in Bucharest or London tomorrow at night, and I want to pay $200, and it will just find you your flight, right? So MCP for sure, I think, is the thing that's the most trendy right now.
But there are, of course, problems with it as well. Like Simon Willison just had a blog post about like code injection in MCP. What I like about it, it's a standard that is emerging to a degree. Like one company started with it and more are jumping on it right now. So rather than like having to deal with like lots of different standards and ideas, we can actually concentrate on making that thing secure and making that thing happen.
Exactly.
So,
And you know, Chris, your background is browsers, and browsers also had emerging standards a long time, 20 plus years ago. And there was things like the browser wars and arguments about why do we need such specification and so on. And it's so cool to see that we've learned from those arguments that now so early into AI, we're already coming up with standardization that prevents things like browser wars and protocol wars. So yeah, I think that parallel is pretty profound, because some are saying, I don't know if I fully agree with this, but some are saying we won't even need browsers anymore, and we don't need web pages anymore, and so on. I don't have a strong opinion there, but I think if there's truth to that, standardization helps a lot, like it did with browsers. So,
I mean, I keep saying, like, having worked on browsers and having worked in operating systems, they start merging more and more. Like the browsers are actually in the background. They're not actually the thing that you click on to go online. You already are online. Most of the OSs nowadays don't work offline anymore, or not properly. And so this kind of boundary has been broken quite some time ago. It's an interesting idea though, where how users will start embracing that, seeing how digitization in some countries or gets slower than others. It's just like an app is still an amazing thing for some governments, for example. So like having an AI MCP, whatever connectivity thing in there for them might be a different story altogether. But yeah, this Friday, we're going to have an edition of the newsletter of the Dev Digest, the WeAreDevelopers Dev Digest, that actually has the MCP article that I talked about from Simon Willison, and also somebody ranting about what's everything that's wrong about MCP. And at the same time, you get some tools how to use your own MCP server inside Copilot in GitHub, and a few other tools that actually manage to play with them and set them up. Let's take a look at some of the other things that I put together. We don't have to go through all of them this time, because there might be not enough time for it. But one thing that really shocked me today is that, like, with the government in the US cutting funding for like all kind of programs, the MITRE-backed cyber vulnerability program, the CVE program, is getting lost funding today. Wow. And that is really, really scary. That really makes me wonder, like, what we can do about this. And I hope there's going to be a way to not make that a commercial thing and still actually make it a government or like publicly funded thing. So, because I mean, in case you don't know, CVE is where basically all the vulnerabilities of every software product are actually recorded, discussed, and actually openly explained why they are security problems and how to fix them. So if that one goes away, we're going to have a real issue. And I'm not saying that this is an infallible government doing something wrong. I'm just saying, like, this is just one of the cuts that actually are pretty scary to think about, because I mean, I don't know. Am I a freak for reading CVE papers, or do you also look into them, Theas?
I think it's, I don't look, well, I look into them when the situation calls for it. For example, Vercel recently had some issues, as you may have seen. So that I look into because I deploy on Vercel, and not just me, but a lot of my peers. Depends on the situation, but those are, I completely understand the value of them. And I think it's important to draw maybe not the wrong conclusion here, yeah? Because like they're losing funding, but they're not stopping, although this may make them stop. And so I think all is not lost, I guess, is what I would say to this article. And hopefully something can be salvaged if, say, some other benefactor steps in to preserve the funding, wherever it might come from. So,
yeah, but it's an interesting thing that kind of went under the radar, and out of a sudden, like, poof, it's gone. You know, like, that is really weird.
Similar to the Wayback Machine that happened some time ago, right?
Slopsquatting, which is a new thing that just a new name for something. So what that one means is you have a supply chain attack, that when you have generative AI tools creating code, they generate packages and package names and pull them immediately from a code resource. And when they start hallucinating, they come up with package names that don't exist. So what people did is, like, look at the hallucinations of the things and then generate malware packages that they put into repositories, and that get automatically then included in your vibe coding idea thing. So it basically shows like how many hallucination rates the different models have in Python and in JavaScript, and it actually shows you how the whole package repository attack is happening right now. This is nothing new. I mean, we had typo squatting in domains for a long time. There was a PayPal domain where the A was the Russian A and not like the Arabic one, not the Latin one. And that was basically looked like PayPal, felt like PayPal, but your data got completely lost and funded whatever.
Yeah.
And then we had the same with npm packages as well. There was typos in npm packages that already got pulled in when people had typos in their CI/CD. But this is a different level to a degree, because I think there's a lack of transparency when you actually get the machine to generate your code and pull the dependencies. So what is your stance on that?
We just have to be vigilant. I think a couple of things. One, I think we have to be vigilant. We can't, like, vibe coding. I posted just now on X that vibe coding is a nightmare. It really is. Like, it's worse than dealing with somebody who is inexperienced, because if it's a person who's inexperienced, you can at least like talk to them in the flesh and mentor them. They're like, bad LLM responses when vibe coding is worse than it's unmentorable, right? And so it's very difficult. And so I think it's just important to pay close attention to the generated output, the slop, so to speak, and to be vigilant and not complacent in this case, because they cannot be trusted at this point in time. I also think that this is one of those moments where, the EU gets a lot of flack for over-regulation, but requiring SBOMs, or software bill of materials, is so valuable here, because it requires that vigilance that we talked about earlier, and it almost legally enforces it. So I think there's definitely a cause for vigilance here, and organizations need to consider how they can make their employees more vigilant in the workplace, I think.
Yeah, I mean, it boils down to vibe coding is great for doing like prototypes, for doing like ideas, for playing with something. But like when your main product is actually built that way, I don't see that happening anytime soon. And I don't see it not necessarily because it isn't possible. I just see it as you said, it is scary as hell, because the machines always give the happy path. They also want to please all the time. So that's why they come up with hallucinations and random things. And then when they generate these package calls and they got called in, maybe it's also on the repositories of the code repository to actually find a way. Like if that one gets more out of hand, and it can easily, because that stuff multiplies much faster than humans do, then we might have to take a look at like NPM and all the other places and see what security options are in place there, or if it's just maybe too permissive.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I think ultimately it just comes down to you can't trust vibe coding, I think.
Yeah, I mean, you can't trust code. I mean, period. I mean, there's like, yesterday I saw another post where somebody was discussing how to do JSON without commas. And because it's so horrible that JSON has commas in it, and then basically we should do just line spaces or white space as a delimiter and these kind of things. And I'm like, really, why do we have to really question, like, I mean, when I write text, I put a full stop at the end of each sentence.
Yeah.
Sometimes a semicolon. But basically it shows me that this instruction is done. Yeah. So it's not really that much hard work to do it, and it makes it much easier to parse, much safer to convert, rather than having to hope for the right white space. But I don't know.
Yeah,
it's an interesting bit.
I think honestly that's the reason CoffeeScript died, in my opinion. You remember CoffeeScript?
Yeah,
it was tabs. It was white space sensitive, and I can't. Yeah,
but so is Python.
Exactly.
I mean, that's the fastest growing language out there right now. So, I mean, yeah, this is an interesting one. Like you shifting over to AI more. Are you actually getting more versed in Python, or do you still live in the TypeScript world?
No. This is actually a common misconception that AI engineering requires Python. And this comes from a fundamental misunderstanding of what AI engineering is, which I would love to clarify, where AI engineering doesn't require training models. It doesn't require doing machine learning work. They are distinct disciplines. And this comes, by the way, from Andrej Karpathy, co-founder of OpenAI, where you don't need to train anything. The application of machine learning is AI engineering. And so how do you apply machine learning? You talk to models. You use JavaScript fetch, and you just do inference over an API, right? And so Python is not mandatory to know if you want to be an AI engineer. Let's not be that gatekeepy. You just bring whatever language you want. If it has a network layer, then make a request to a language model or any model and use that to solve problems. That is literally engineering, is problem solving, and AI engineering is using AI to that end. So yeah, I do write some Python occasionally if I want to like do machine learning work, and I do machine learning work. Like I will train my own models here and there. But for like consumer AI application, if I want to build you a chatbot or something like this, I will never use Python for that.
Well, it's a bit like you can do a 3D game without knowing OpenGL.
Right.
Like,
yeah.
Or like basically any GTK or all kind of graphics software, and writing directly to the machine. You're actually using library on top of library on top of library, and that, yeah. I mean, I post on social media that I said like the sentence "you're not a professional developer if you're not" is the same as "I'm not a racist," but because there's nothing good coming after that sentence. Like it's either gatekeeping, as you said, or it's just trying to sell you some content that actually is making you a perfect professional developer, which is also not the thing that happens. It's an interesting world right now where people are seeing themselves as like professional, but we have to think about that. I think we have to start thinking about, like, in terms of career, what does it mean to be on which level right now? And these levels have changed a lot since we generate a lot of code with AI rather than like writing it by hand.
Yeah. I think your statement, and I did see that on social media. I thought that was very interesting because professional is a gate-kept term in general, right? It means you're getting paid to do something. That's what at least that's what it used to mean. Like as as an employed professional, that's what. So if you're like coding as a hobby, or some would say as an amateur, people think amateur is a bad word, but amateur literally, it comes from amore. It comes from love. Amateurs do what they do because they love it. It comes from the love of the craft. And so if you're not employed, but you love coding and you're an amateur developer, I don't know that that's a bad thing, as people might assume. But I don't know, like about professional developer, I wonder if there is an element of gatekeeping there, rightfully so, because professional means you get paid to do it. You know what I mean? Like I am a developer. I think that you can't ever gatekeep, because who are you to say? But professional, I don't know. I would love your thoughts on that.
I feel it's a little bit like the word blogger. It made me think about the word journalist kind of changed. When everybody could blog and everybody could put things online, it meant there was this real kind of identity crisis amongst journalists. In saying, well, what's the difference between us and bloggers? And I think the general consensus was, well, journalists will understand the ethical considerations they have to make before they go and publish a story. So you might map that onto development as somebody who, like you were saying then, Chris, understands that if I import this package, there's security concern I have to mitigate, rather than just, well, I've imported the package and now I've got the feature I wanted, therefore I'm a developer. So I can understand that. Maybe the gatekeeping in that respect isn't the worst thing in the world. It's about protecting people to some degree.
I think the problem with your focus on like you get paid to do it. I mean, I got paid to write JavaScript for 5 years before I wrote my book, and I had no idea what I was doing. I was just happy it didn't break. And then I wrote the book, and then I couldn't fake it any longer and actually looked into it. So in my case, I think the gatekeeping idea would be, you're professional if you know what you're doing and what the impact of it is. Like if you're just using things and you're happy with the outcome and you're concentrating on the shiny outcome, then you might get paid for that, but you're still not a professional developer to me. Like,
right.
So that's the thing that might be. That's why when I interviewed people at Yahoo, for example, we asked them to build a website for us that was a PSD, and we didn't even look too much into how they coded it, but they actually asked them why they chose to do it in a certain way. We asked them to explain to us why they solved that problem in that regard, and that actually showed me much more if that person is a professional or not. Because it's just saying like, oh, I made it work is kind of not good enough.
Right. And so you were interested more in the thought process that would lead to the outcome, as opposed to just the outcome.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting thing that we talked earlier about that spacewalk right now with Katy Perry. I mean, later on, I'm changing my tires of my car, so I'm going to go to the basement, get the tires out, and drive to the garage and get the car changed. Should I tweet afterwards? Now I know how it feels like to be a mechanic. Because
Yeah.
I just brought the tires there. Like it feels like there's a lot of people that actually are just passengers along the ride and actually see themselves as professionals. And that's just unfair to the people that put a lot of effort in and put a lot of things in. I mean, we talked about this before the show. I'm actually more excited about the Indian space program that managed to land on the south pole of the moon, and that was like 80% women in the ground team there, and nobody has headlines about this for some reason. It's really weird.
Yeah. That is very strange. I didn't even know about that. That's how strange it is.
Now, Google had its like big next conference, and the big thing that they announced there is the Ironwood TPUs, and basically it says that it changes the biggest hidden cost of AI. Now, inference is supposed to be the huge hidden cost of AI. Can you explain to us what inference is?
Yeah, inference is speaking to a model. It's giving input tokens and getting output tokens. As far as I know, it's literally performing semantically the word inference. That's what it means. You infer things, and when you send ChatGPT a prompt, "Hey, what's the weather today?" then the inference is the output of like this is the answer. To me, that's the most intuitive definition of this word, and I would love to be corrected, but that's what inference. So I think I don't understand why this is a hidden cost, because we pay by input tokens and output tokens per request. Yeah, so maybe there's something I'm missing there, but I don't see what's hidden about that cost.
Well, I think the cost is about training the model in itself. I guess that's why DeepSeek was such a difference to the others we had before, because it already had the inference in it, as far as I understood it. So that's why it actually could run much more efficient and could run on lower spec machines than all the other models before. But I mean, to take that away, I'm actually more annoyed about like hardware. Of course, hardware makes sense to have that in there, but there was already a mention that when it comes to AI engineering, that it actually becomes an elitist thing because you actually have to have fat machines to actually do it yourself. And when we now get to like, oh, you have to have that or that chipset before you can even do that, that made me stop doing game development. I couldn't be bothered buying new graphics cards all the time just to try out a new game. And it feels like that we're now shifting everything into hardware. On consumer hardware, server hardware, different story. I think that's an interesting. There will be an interesting battlefield of like who's going to be allowed to be an AI developer and more efficient than others.
Yeah, I kind of agree, but at the same time, AI is getting so commoditized that I hope that that's not true. I hope that through capitalism, and we hear a lot about the negative sides of capitalism, and indeed there are many, but there's also a positive where you have economies of scale, right? Meaning things get cheaper as they get done more and as more people consume them. And we can actually see that, like GPT-4o Mini is the cheapest model available from OpenAI. Even cheaper than 3.5 Turbo, even cheaper than a less capable model, just because of usage volume, among other things. So I think that's very, very interesting. About the hidden costs here, I get it finally. The thesis that says inference is a hidden cost, is a huge hidden cost, as it does in this article, is because a lot of researchers, and I don't personally think this way, that's why I didn't understand it, but like looking at the industry as a whole, a lot of people ascribe huge cost to training models. And indeed, it is super expensive. Like you need, as you mentioned, Chris, it's elitist. You need like very high quality hardware. In fact, GPT-3 was trained on a cluster of 8 highly expensive, highly capable GPUs. And wow, that he's searching. Anyway, Tekken. Anyway, so you need expensive GPUs, and you need time, right? You need training time, which is electricity over time. But it doesn't stop there. Once you get a trained model, it doesn't stop there, because then you have the cost of evals, which is making sure the outputs actually make sense. And all of this combines to an enormous figure. So then what makes inference, a huge hidden cost is that it grows more over time. With training, you train a model, it's super expensive, but when you have your final weights, those costs are done. Whereas the thesis here is inference is a huge hidden cost because you pay for it infinitely. You know what I mean? Like you never stop paying for inference because people keep performing inference. Users keep querying ChatGPT, but the training process has a definite end, whereas the inference stage or using the model has no definite end. People will use inference for the rest of maybe their lives, right? And so that's what they're saying here is a hidden cost.
I just searched that one because I found that one yesterday. This is a new model, Token 7B Instruct Commercial 0.4, and it's a European model, which basically has been trained mostly on European data, has pre-trained with 4 terabyte tokens and 7 billion whatever, and it's done by the Fraunhofer Institute. And I found that interesting that it actually supports all these languages. And that's a really, really... that will be interesting to get somebody from that on the show to talk about it a bit, because I find that a really interesting thing to actually have something that is very much Europe focused and still at that scale. Yeah. So yeah, it's an interesting one. So Hugging Face is always quite fun to just look around what's going on there. But I mean, I talked to Dan about this as well. Like I'm getting tired of models. Like I'm just getting like, there's a new one every day and I'm supposed to know about this. And then we have benchmarks and then we learn that benchmarks have been played. And so how do you keep up? Or do you just basically take a seat back and say, like, let's wait a week if it's really that exciting or not?
Yeah, I don't care. That's my answer. I really don't care. I'm more interested in solving problems than keeping up with some hype cycle. And so it took a long time for me to get even on Claude 3.7 Sonnet, which is Claude 3.5 Sonnet, but with thinking. And I thought, why is this necessary? In fact, the moment OpenAI announced GPT-01, which is its first reasoning model, honestly, a lot of this just smelled like... I'm trying to not swear, but it smelled like BS to me, including reasoning models, right? Because reasoning models themselves, you could just build one yourself using a cheap 3.5 Turbo or 4.0 Mini, where you just build a loop, a thought loop. Hey, think, generate, now reevaluate. Like you just do a while loop until some condition is satisfied. You've got a reasoning model. And the way reasoning models work under the hood are very similar, except they're more token efficient. Like the thoughts are not English words. They're more... tokens that the model can understand, but ultimately, like, it's not. And so unfortunately, because it's so new, there's a lot of like hype driven, hey, get that bag, the big red alert emoji, you need to pay attention to this or you're going to miss out. And my answer to all of this is I don't care. Like, show me actual value, show me problems that are being solved, and then we can start to care. I think another example of this is MCP, right? You may see a lot of people saying, hey, if you don't get MCP, you're going to miss out. And now I can say that that's true because I've built something myself. So my cycle is this. I see things in the news and I usually dismiss them until they come back like 3 or 4 times. And then I start paying attention. And if it's something that I can use as in get my hands dirty, the next step is, okay, let's just build something small to see if this works or not and how this works. And then I make a conclusion. So like you said, I see something a few times, I dismiss it. If it comes back enough times, then I'll pay attention. And then after attention is usually like, let's build something hands-on and make sure this is actually worth my time. I'll give you an example. DeepSeek, as you know, some weeks ago, took the entire world by storm. And I thought, okay, it showed up enough that I was like, let's try it. I ran it locally, the smaller model, and I was like, this is actually cool. It's open source and on par with OpenAI's closed source models. And then I looked at the biggest DeepSeek model possible, which has exactly, you're looking at Ollama, exactly with Ollama. You need to upgrade it. We found the biggest DeepSeek model, which is DeepSeek 671B, 671 billion parameters. That's roughly the same size as GPT-4. And again, this kind of model is not for pedestrian hardware. There is no one who can run this at home. And so then I thought, okay, what's it going to take to run this? And so then I started looking into actually renting GPU-based units with AWS, just again, to get hands-on experience with this. And I found out that would cost $1,000 an hour, which, okay, if you're like doing 3 hours, that's $3,000. You can buy a MacBook for that. And so some experimentation ensued to the point where now I'm very comfortable deploying any size model, however I want, over some type of API. But the thought process was, I'm not just going to entertain this immediately until the value is proven. I hope that answers your question.
Yeah,
and this is also why I think a lot of NFT, Web3, crypto, blockchain, there's value there, but the addressable market for this value, to speak capitalist, is not as wide, right? It helps people securely send money or like track where your food comes from on the blockchain. But in terms of value by virtue of solving real problems for real people, the surface area just isn't there. And I do believe that's why it didn't catch on as much as AI catches on, because like the potential for problem solving and bettering the world is just broader. So
yeah, and I mean, there's applications that always work. Like, I mean, the whole blockchain thing worked in the finance market for years now, and actually, it helped when the hype got away. It helped when the hype was not there anymore. Then people can do their job. I mean, we had on the show here, we had people that actually are using machine learning to find leaks in oil pipelines. We have later on a person from Neo4j here who actually does the databases and shows how to graph rack, makes it easier to get your own LLMs to a smaller size that you can use them in your own production kind of stuff. So there's always this happening, but I just the noise and the distraction out there is just driving me bonkers. I think,
yeah,
Dan, you agreed with that as well. Like, we're getting a model fatigue to a degree.
yeah, the right answer is ignore most of it. Like I think another example of model fatigue, I like this term, is even AI vendors like OpenAI with ChatGPT, or even Perplexity, even Cursor, anything that allows you to choose models now just has like a little field that defaults to auto, where the application itself will choose the model for you, because this is such a pain in the butt. You don't want to have to think of, oh, should I talk to 4.0 mini? Should I talk to 4.1? I don't care. I just want my problem solved. And I think that's the right move, is to just look, all of this noise, go away, give me some signal.
Yeah, I feel like the idea of having a marketplace where you can sell models that you trained yourself has not taken on. That seems to be like, that was the first round of iteration of like how you can make money as a developer with AI, but I don't see people doing it.
Yeah, the answer is, I think, MCP, actually, because MCP is extremely lightweight to develop. You don't need millions of GPU. You just, it's a server and client, right? You can make this with Express. And so I think that's it. For all the developers, especially web developers who are concerned with losing their jobs, I think MCP is a great progression, because everyone's going to need an MCP server if AI assistants take off the way that we're anticipating. And so if you're a web developer, the path from building websites the next step is not to train your own model and share it. It's to create your own MCP server and share it, and extend the capabilities of AI assistants.
Well, the other thing that's happening right now, of course, is that everybody comes up with their own editor. You got Firebase Studio. We got WordPress now has an AI-powered website builder, which is an interesting one, because I thought that was what WordPress is. Then you had Canva has image generation, interactive coding, spreadsheets, and more. And yeah, and all of them are making their own stuff. I'm confused about this. I mean, you were one of the people that went on stage and showed like and talked about Cursor and stuff. And I like my VS Code. Why don't I get a plugin? Like, is it just that people want to lock you into their environment because they put that? Because I think the Firebase Studio is just the IDEs project from Google rebranded, right?
Yeah, I don't know much about Firebase Studio because I don't leave Cursor, and this is very much by choice. I think why no plugin is a great question. And by the way, I never got into IDEs or Firebase because it's super gate kept here in Europe. I just couldn't, like, even Gemini, I couldn't use Gemini for months because of European bureaucracy, which may be with merit. In any case, I think the question of why no extension is a very good one, because there are extensions. For example, Zencoder it's a VS Code extension that competes with Cursor, which is a VS Code fork. And you might be asking, like, why not extension and why fork? I have no idea. I think your take on, is it to lock you in? Maybe cynical, but also true. I don't know. I do use Cursor as my daily driver because of the amount of polish it has. It's just the user experience and the user interface is perfect, actually. And I've used other editors like Windsurf, Zencoder. They're lacking in polish. For example, overflow issues in the UI. Like you hover over something, you get a tooltip, but the tooltip is under another panel because of Z-index or something like this. And this may be the reason to have a fork, is because you can edit more than just your little extension panel. You can edit the entire thing end to end. And so I think maybe that's why, is to escape some of the limitations that you have from just an extension. Yeah.
Dan, what about you?
So,
What's your daily driver now?
I'm on Cursor as well, and I think it's generally, I mean, I did try Bolt as well, and I actually got really, really bad results from it. Like, I was shocked at how bad what I got was, and I sort of thought, well, it can't be the prompt, because I've given the same prompt to Cursor and got a very good response. So maybe that's just me. I at that point, I kind of jumped ship. But I would say I actually gave the Firebase Studio a go, and I don't know, I'm left feeling a little bit like some of these are pitched very strangely, in that they're, Firebase Studio, so you'd assume you're trying to get developers to then use Firebase, and maybe you want to abstract away some of the complexity, give them a UI, they can use natural language. Yes, it will create a quite basic UI, even with some, I was quite impressed actually with some of the description that you can do, in that it will take your prompt and then it will kind of try to organize it and say, well, is this the layout that you'd like? Is this the color scheme that you'd like? Is this the structure on the page? So you can kind of confirm those things beforehand. So you think, oh, I'm going to get a really nice response here. And then I got a very, 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 very basic UI that wasn't very good. Now, the thing was, I thought that's great for somebody who's almost using it as an entry to vibe coding. I just want to make something, and it was saying create a tip calculator app, things like that might be useful. But for a developer, you get given the code, and you could, I suppose, copy and paste it out or deploy straight from there. But because it abstracts it away, you feel like, well, this isn't getting me into Firebase. It's just being another tool I can create a UI with. And if I'm a vibe coder who doesn't want to learn to code, then I don't really care about Firebase. I just want to make the thing. So I feel that it's kind of falling in that gap in the middle, where I'm like, who's this for? It's great fun to play with. It looks great. I love the UI. I love the scrolling. It's very like, oh, this feels nice. But what's the point? Was kind of what I was left with. It's all, the substance is a little bit, I'm not quite sure who this is for. That was my take on it. But yeah, I might sound like a cynic.
I mean, GitHub Copilot now has this agent mode in there as well. So that's actually inside my VS Code as well. So that's probably my issue, because I work for Microsoft. I got GitHub Copilot for free from the very beginning, and I talked about it a bit on public. So they kept giving me updates and insights. So it feels like that. Yeah, I think another good advice for every developer out there is not just chase the next editor, but find one that you're actually happy with, and then see what you can build with it, rather than just focus on rearranging your panes. It's a bit like when people talk about their terminal and dot files. Basically, how do you specify your terminal? We had this earlier as well. My terminal is just plain how it came with OS X. I didn't do anything to it because I know Linux. So basically, I don't care what the thing looks like. I just use it to run commands, rather than just do something in the whole day in my thing. But it's interesting when you talked about Z-index, because I loved that from Manuel Matuzovic the other day, where there's now an infinity keyword in CSS. So you can do calc infinity multiplied by 1 pixel, and that means you will always have the highest in the Z-index. And yeah, it's interesting. I love how it's obviously a joke, but he went all in for it. And
yeah,
very well.
It took me to the end.
I think this is another thing that most developers struggle with, rightfully so. But you don't even need Z-index really if you're intelligent about your stacking context. This is something vibe coders will never get, right? Because it's so deep. But if you just position your element under another element, it will be on top of it. And so Z-index really is a workaround for poor semantic HTML. And maybe that's a hot take, I don't know, but I honestly never had to lean on Z-index for a long time, because I just know things that are on top also come under in the code. They come lower in the code. And so I just want to voice that, like, hey, if you're using Z-index, there may be other ways.
Yeah, I think the only times when you have fixed elements, or when you have full overlays, and you're building a full overlay in an environment that you don't own, like ads and these kind of things. So that's where it became interesting. But yeah, Z-index abuse, especially when you get into like 3 digits or 4 digits, basically shows to me that you have not cared about CSS, and you basically, it's a bit like putting important on everything, like, and then hoping it works. So that's the other thing that people keep doing. Another interesting one that I found, is it really something we need to fix, is localhost domains. So what you can do is actually, I mean, when you run your app locally, you have a localhost 1.1337.80.80, whatever, and you basically, you can set your caddy file, a reverse proxy to localhost, and then you have a .localhost domain. Fun, but I mean, I don't see it, because normally you just run your build and then it opens the browser for you anyway. So I think I never typed in localhost for years now.
Yeah, I think like I like typing in localhost. I like never once in my entire life was I like, oh, you know what would be awesome if I have. However, you need a top level domain to have a TLS certificate locally. And I've been part of teams where you have to work in a secure environment even on localhost, which that's a whole nother can of worms. Why? And I think honestly that may be not necessary, but you may have that constraint. And in this case, it makes sense, because what a lot of folks will do is like local.dev, and they'll edit their hosts file to rewrite this to their IP address, their 127.0.0.1, similar to here in your example in the blog post. But so I think there's a case for that makes it more explicit that .localhost aliases to a local IP instead of like .dev aliasing to a local IP. But I think honestly this is overkill if you ask me.
Yeah, it seems to be like, I mean, if you have that many local hosts running, then again, I mean, at one time I was leading a team and I had like 18 projects that I had to look after, and they were all in different languages. So basically I had like so many things on my own machine, it made no sense any longer. So just use a cloud for that, or use a Docker container somewhere. That makes more sense to actually do these kind of things. But it's cute that you can do these kind of things. Then again, I think misconfiguring that might also give you a good opportunity to actually get people from the outside to access your machine. So much like tunneling allows you to do. So that's the other worry there. Yeah, one thing I found pretty interesting about this one is as well, when you take a look at like people's vibe code posts on social media, when people are like, oh, I wrote this thing in 3 minutes. What's the address? And it's localhost 3000. And they just copied and pasted the localhost in there and asked people to watch it on the internet. And you're like, yeah.
Or even more diabolical, some people say, hey, I coded this product in, like a day, 3 days, something like this, and people go use it, and then it gets hacked. Did you see this? This happens so often that these things just get hacked. And then the founders or the authors of these products go like, oh my gosh, I don't know what to do. Okay, I'm shutting it down. That happened, I think, like 3 times within the last couple of weeks.
Shocking that untested code going live is a bad idea. I don't know why. This is odd. Like, I mean, you had a good tweet about vibe coding, Dan, the other day. What was your way to put it?
I effectively just said, like, anyone who says that kind of thing of like, I built this, whatever it is, in 12 hours, it's like an instant block, because I know that, I mean, I can see now that really that is the marketing. It's just a, it's a lot of this, the amount of times I've seen insert name of platform here is cooked, like Netflix is cooked because look, I've made an alternative to it. We can all go and make a Netflix clone on our computer. We're not going to compete with them. There's a lot more to Netflix, for example, than a website. But the point is, you're seeing people kind of doing it as it's almost rage bait to a degree. It's almost like designed, I think, to annoy programmers who know that this isn't true. But it's that crossover again between the development niche and then the mainstream, somebody who's not in development. That post will break out of our little niche, and it will land on the feeds of the average person, who then says, oh my God, this is amazing. And then they go and sign up to the tool, or they get, kind of lured in by it, or they start thinking they can do the same. And so I just think it's all really disingenuous. We all know it isn't accurate. Like, we know it's not, they know it's not, but they will commit to it because it is the marketing for the tool that they've made that day, and it's disposable. So like you say, if there's problems with it, fine, I'll shut it down, I'll just make another one, because everything feels completely disposable, and I just feel it's quite dishonest, really. It encourages people to be quite dishonest. That's what I'm seeing anyway.
It feels inflationary as well. Like, I mean, it started with like, okay, use our tool and you can publish to the cloud in like 3 clicks. And then it was like, do this bootcamp and you're going to get $200,000 salary tomorrow. And now it's like, you don't even need to get a education anymore. Just click these 3 things together and you probably can make millions of money. And that brings me to the last thing that we're going to probably cover, because you said you want to have something. And that's Fireship on YouTube. I was a big fan of Fireship. I still kind of am, but it's driving me crazy. It's like this 1 minute thing with like 6,000 memes in it. He has the right information, but it just I'm not a squirrel. It feels like, is it made for people that actually have an attention span for 2 seconds? But it seems it's working. I mean, Tejas, you're doing a lot of stuff online as well. How do you feel about this, or do you feel like I just don't want to go down the same route, no matter how successful it is?
Yeah, no, I love Fireship.
Yeah.
I think it's a really great tool, because like I think this is what people want is so my take is everybody's overwhelmed. You said this earlier, Chris. There's just a lot of nonsense. If we think like engineers, signal to noise, there's way too much noise. And it's really hard to glean signal. There's way too many people saying, you're not going to make it if you don't this, or Netflix is cooked, or whatever. And honestly, I just want signal. I just want, give me the highlights, the things that I shouldn't miss, and then make them make sense. And so Fireship, I think, does that. And they do that with humor and memes. And so I think that's extremely valuable. In fact, I think, what's his name? Taylor, Alex, whoever is the person behind Fireship, is just really good at that, is making slides, because really it's just slides with text and hilarious memes. No, I think they do a great job, and I think honestly that's a job that not many people can do. It requires taste, and I think this is also the great differentiator. If you're worried about AI taking your job, then taste is what protects you, and it's the combination of taste and skill that protects you. And I think if we talk about Fireship, it marries taste and skill very well. They will tastefully give you 2-minute videos on things you need to know, on signal from yesterday's noise, which I think is quite valuable.
Yeah, because it started more like a tutorial course, and I found that actually back then it was more my alley. Doesn't have to be. I'm old and spent, and I could go on vacation already. So, but I think that's a very good point, that you basically, it brings the signal to the noise of yesterday. So, and speaking of taste, you wanted to have a lunch break, so was very happy that you were here. Are you going to be at the Congress as well in July?
I would love to. I mean, it's in my home city, and I get to meet you, Chris, and a bunch of great folks. I think Francesco was there last year. I don't know if he's going to be there this year, but yeah, no, absolutely look forward to it. So
cool. Well, thanks very much. This was Tejas Kumar, and any last words for people out there?
Hey, I just
don't buy my book.
Genuinely, just thank you for having me. Thank you for letting me be a part of this. It was great fun, as always, Chris, to talk to you, Dan, and I look forward to doing it again. So thank you.
Cool. See you soon.
Take care. Bye.